start the program. Uh, Good evening, everyone. This is Dean Hasib Ahmed from the School of Management. I would like to welcome all of you here. I'm glad you could join us. We have a very eloquent, inspiring speaker for this evening. Uh, I'm going to start with thanking the School of Management Dean Student Advisory Board who are bringing this opportunity to us. I also want to thank Amanda Rodden, all my faculty colleagues, faculty and administrator and staff members in the at the university. So I want to thank them, thank everyone here. Uh, and what I will do, well, I see the graduate students are also joining. One of the students is joining us from India, uh, and but she is on the on-campus graduate program. Uh, and so I'm going to and get the housekeeping things done first. So we will announce the winner of uh, the door prize winner at the very end. So we're going to I'm going to hand over uh, the the mic to Dr. Rayburn, who is joining us from Manhattan, 45th floor. I guess he's going to show us the Hudson River view and also the Central Park view from his apartment. I'm sorry, from his condominium. And uh, and once I hand over to him, uh, following his presentation, uh, uh, he will take your questions, and then once that is done, I will announce the winner from the audience, and you have to be present during that time. So we're going to use that and follow that format. Again, thanks to everyone, uh, all our students, graduates and undergraduate students, and our faculty members from inside the School of Management, our campus outside of School of Management. And with that, I'm going to proceed with introduction of our tonight's speaker. As I mentioned, Dr. Rayburn is a serial entrepreneur, and he was a professor at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. There were two professors there who were in my dissertation committee, uh, and Dr. Rayburn was chairing that, and Dr. Dennis Tosh was part of that. At that time, they were running a seminar incorporated because that's a time of financial deregulation, DIDMCA and FIREA and all the subsequent uh, uh, deregulation of the financial landscape. And so they're running that seminar for financial institutions that time. And they later on, Dr. Rayburn and Dr. Tosh and two other faculty members, Dr. Johnson and Dr. Bob Dorsey, uh, four of them, they formed a company called FNC, which essentially started from their offices, respective offices in the College of Business. FNC stands for Financial Neural Computing, and in short, we call it FNC. So they started that in the College of Business, and then they had multiple rooms when I was there within the college. And then it grew to the extent that they started expanding all over the country and also outside of the country to Brazil. Uh, and, uh, uh, and so they were opening offices all over the place. And but important thing is they're the pioneer, the innovators of bringing neural networks and artificial intelligence to the arcane mortgage industry. So they have they created a collateral management system, which helps tremendously both the mortgage origination process and mortgage securitization process. And so it was a big, bang for the mortgage industry, and almost all the big banks and medium-sized banks, pretty much they had a monopoly in the marketplace. And subsequent to that, he took the company public. And after that, he sold the company, created 45 millionaires in that process, in that transaction. And Dr. Rayburn is currently serving as the chair of the state entrepreneurship board, entrepreneurial venture board. He's appointed by the governor as chairman of that board. And that body was formed by the legislature to promote entrepreneurial venture creation in the state. Subsequent of that first company, which has grown tremendously, then he established his second venture, which is now he is leading that. He is the CEO and the chairman and CEO of that company called, it's really called Mortgage Trade, but in short, again, we call it mTrade. So he is running that company. I think FNC had more than 300 employees, maybe close to 400 level. And also this current company, mTrade, is also doing extremely well. I'm sure that will be a success, another success story under the belt of Dr. Rayburn. So it is a tremendous honor to be able to introduce to you Dr. Bill Rayburn. And Dr. Rayburn, I'm going to hand over to you without further ado.
Thank you, Dean. And we were just catching up earlier this evening and talking about what it was like when you're going to school and that sort of thing. And we'll talk about that, students. I want to first start by addressing the faculty. I was a faculty member. It was not my calling, really, but I did the research in the professional journals and wrote the books and did the things you have to do to be granted tenure at an SEC school, the Southeastern Conference School, which is a difficult thing to do. And then after I got it, I gave it up and started a company, and we'll talk about that. And to the students, we're going to talk about making a difference and talking about what you want to do with life. Now, you'll notice he said I was in Manhattan. My wife and I do have a place in Manhattan, but I'm from the southern part of New York. If you've already picked up my dialect, my colloquialisms, I'm from the southern part of New York. Actually, I'm a native Mississippian. And we'll talk about that a little bit. In addition to having another company and being married, I'm business partners and started this thing with my wife. And so we live, eat, sleep, and breathe this thing 24/7. And we're going to talk about specifics about making a difference. Now, when you think about your career, I'm going to primarily address the students. You need to be thinking about what you want to do with your life. And we'll talk about that today as we go through this discussion. Periodically, I will stop and take questions and that sort of thing, and then I'll take questions at the end. And so if you have a question, if you'll just jot that down, when I stop, you pipe right in and away we'll go. And I love questions. You would be amazed at the questions I have received over the years. So let's go to the next slide and see if I can get this to page down one slide. And maybe I can. And let's go to number 2. We'll see what we have here. All right. I've actually done pieces or parts of really 4 companies. I did a real estate development, which I didn't like that. My family was in that business. I did a seminar and training company with another colleague at Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, called Seminars Inc. And then we decided to jump off the high dive and do a software company, a technology company, a fintech. It's called fintech today. It was just called a software company at the time. It was called FNC. Here's what FNC did. Many of you want to buy a home a house when you get out of school. You would love to have a place to live. You say, well, I don't really want a house. Well, if you get married, your spouse will probably want a house, or a significant other will want a house. And so you're going to probably go buy a house. Almost 70% of Americans own a house. And so it takes two decision numbers, many numbers, but two decision numbers to make you a loan. That loan is called a mortgage. It takes two decision numbers. It takes a credit number on you. That's a FICO score. It's called a FICO score because it was invented by a company called Fair Isaac and Company. And it also takes an appraisal. And so what FNC did is we invented a way to sort through a mortgage file, find the appraisals, and there may be 2 or 3 appraisals in there, put them in chronological order, pull the data out of the last one, score that appraisal, and tell the lender how much risk was in that appraisal. For example, if the appraiser said it's worth $500,000, is it really $500,000, or is it $480 or $520? What's the real number? And it was wildly successful. We were processing 60% of the mortgages in America when we sold that company. In fact, several of our clients were in the Detroit land area. Quicken Loans, which is now called Rocket Mortgage, and as well as there's another mortgage company in Ann Arbor. I realize some of you Michigan State fans probably don't recognize Ann Arbor. I get that. But another mortgage company in Ann Arbor that was a big client of ours. And so I've been to Detroit and Livonia and Troy and all the suburbs many times. We sold that in 2016. And then Lois and I moved across the street. She ran sales and marketing at FNC, moved across the street and started a company called mTrade. It was called Mortgage Trade at the time. What does it do? When a financial institution makes you a mortgage, they need to sell that mortgage. They don't keep it in-house. They sell it. And we make the platform, the software that the big banks purchase mortgages from non-bank originators and smaller banks. We make that platform that they buy those mortgages on. And that's what we do as a company that is critical to the functioning of America's financial system. And we'll talk about that. I'll stop in a few moments to take questions. Here is a graph, if you will, of the U.S. mortgage market. And you want to buy a house. You're the buyer in this flow chart on the left-hand side there. The seller wants to sell you the house. If you have the cash, you give them the cash and they give you the house. The problem is almost every person in the United States has what we call a bigger wanter than they have pocketbook. In other words, they want more house than they can really afford. They don't have that cash, so they need to get a loan, and that loan is called a mortgage. And so what happens is the seller gives you the house, the buyer goes to a lender or a big lender, we call a lender aggregator, and that buyer, you, sign a promissory note to the bank gives you cash, you endorse that check they give you and give all that cash to the seller, you get the house and a big note, and that bank has a negotiable instrument known as a mortgage that they're going to sell. They can sell that over to the GSEs, the government-sponsored enterprises. That's people like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Or they can sell it to one of the big Wall Street firms, or they can put it in their portfolio if they're a really big institution. What we do, our core market here is in the, if you will, in the purple. We're all about streamlining the mortgage capital markets. Why is that so important? The bank makes you a loan, and for them to make the next person a loan, they need to sell that loan as quickly as possible so they can make the next person a loan, reliquify their balance sheet. And so we significantly reduce that time that it takes for that small bank in your area to sell that mortgage and get paid so they can make somebody else a mortgage. So we're all about helping the next buyer get that loan much, much quicker. All right, let's stop. Questions or comments? If I don't hear anything, after a moment, I realize people are on mute. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to move forward.
Ray, this is Christine. I have a question for you. Christine Wallace. Question for you. Working with your wife, why your wife and not somebody else with some other experience?
So why do I first want or desire to work with my wife and have her as a business partner? Hey, that's a great question. Fantastic question. And not somebody else. Well, she spent 10 years on Wall Street and is very talented. And frankly, I think she's one of the most talented people on the planet. That's that in terms of this is, look, we're married after 6 o'clock at night and before 8 a.m. in the morning time. When we go to work, you want it straight. It's pretty, as your dean will tell you, it comes very unfiltered with me. And so when you go to work, everybody's got to paddle their own canoe and carry their own load. There's no, I mean, we have heated discussions in the company. And so I think the main reason is that she's A, highly qualified, and B, very effective. And so in the company, it takes, let's just talk. We run a fintech company. The average time to, and I'm old school, you can go out and raise a lot of money, and I'm going to talk about raising money tonight. You can go out and raise a lot of money from venture capitalists and private equity folks and give up a lot of your equity. But I'm not about that. I'm about being frugal and raising the money you need and then becoming profitable. And I'm old school. I'm all about cash flow. One of these days, there'll be cycles in the market where cash flow will be just the most important thing. And that's the way I am. I'm all about cash flow. So why her? She ran sales and marketing at FNC, and when she got in the seat and took over, she said, this has way more value than what we're charging. And so she came in and doubled prices overnight. And the only people that fussed were our own salespeople. Not one client fussed. And when we sold that company, our EBITDA, our earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, that's the way companies keep score. It's essentially their operating margin. Our EBITDA margin was 60%, which is unheard of. And that's largely because of her. Other questions or comments? So she's all about the bottom line, which I like a lot. All right, I'm going to move on. Other questions?
Hi, quick question for you. How is kind of the unprecedented housing market just kind of right now? It's a huge seller's market and there's less and less houses to sell. I know that's at least a common problem in this area. How has that impacted your guys' business?
So the question is, I'll repeat for those of you who may have had trouble hearing, I'll repeat the question. We have a market imbalance right now. We have much more demand than we have supply. You know, you get in these economics classes. I'm sorry, I'm a finance person, so I take a ding at economist every chance I get. You know, the old joke, you know, the difference in a Ph.D. in finance and a Ph.D. in economics. Well, when I went to school, it was $20,000 a year, and now it's about, $80,000 a year, or maybe 100. And so anyway, having said that, there's always this imbalance in supply of housing and demand for housing. And a lot of it has to do with the price. And it's not the absolute price. People are not looking at, and purchasers are not looking at what they have to pay in absolute dollar terms. They're looking at that monthly expenditure. And because rates have come way down, the monthly expenditure, even though the price of the asset has gone way up, the monthly expenditure, it has been stable or declined because rates are at unprecedented levels in my lifetime for long-term financing. And so that's what people are looking at. I mean, we've got, I don't want to start preaching, but in Austin, Texas, as an example, you have home builders who are not putting prices on houses. They are going out and they are putting on Friday afternoon a for sale sign, taking bids, and on Sunday afternoon, they award the highest bidder, and they're selling for thousands of dollars over what should be market, tens of thousands over what should be market value. So that will cure itself. I think rates ticking back up, if you follow the 10-year or the 30-year T-bond or T-note, they've ticked back up in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I think you'll start to see some cooling. I think that's largely driven by the price of the money as opposed to the price of the underlying asset. But we'll see those balances. Home builders get that big time. It'll be lagged out 9, 12 months. That makes sense?
Yep.
It doesn't really affect our business. We just want you to borrow some money. All right. If you borrow money, so you know, what's this is not the financial term. I'm going to use the term duration, not financial duration, but duration to mean length. All right. In your finance classes, you learn about duration, but I'm simply referring to the term duration for length of mortgage. The length of mortgages before you get a new one has come way down. The constant prepayment rate has come way down because of refinancing. And so that velocity of those mortgages turning over and over is what we want. Our pricing model is P times Q. In the Q, every time you get lots of refinancing, you get lots of volume units moving through the financial system. That's fantastic. That is exactly what we want. I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more before we go on? Okay, I'm going to move on now. And go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to ask, what about the lenders that don't plan on selling the debt? How do they work? And how is that different from-
if a lender tells you they're not going to sell the debt, they're going to make a lot of loans and they're not going to sell it. In a financial institution, they have to go raise more capital if they're going to do that to maintain their equity ratios. Any lender telling you that, you should, if you can short their stock, you should short their stock. And the reason being is because they represent more risk. They have less liquidity. A financial institution needs to maintain liquidity. And so somebody that tells you that is either outright lying to you, or, I mean, a financial institution in the United States is in the business of assembling and shipping loans. That's what they do. Now, to the extent that that's for homogeneous loans. To the extent they're heterogeneous, they want to keep those on their balance sheet. You may see some large commercial deals that do that, but residential deals, they cannot take that interest rate risk. Let me give you an example. They've been making you loans at 3% and less. As rates go up, the value of that mortgage, there's an inverse price year relationship. As rates go up, the value of that mortgage goes down. That's independent of your house value. But the value of that negotiable instrument is rates go up, go down. And so a bank that is holding a fixed rate mortgage in a rising rate environment there's only one word for it in Mississippi. It's called stupid. All right. I'm being very transparent. Okay. I'm not making any comment about your financial institution. I'm simply giving you sound financial principles. I used to teach, well, I hadn't been in a classroom in 20 years, but I used to teach the graduate course in financial institutions. And we in America are I think your dean had my financial institutions course to PhD level. In America, we are in the business of creating financial instruments and shipping them. And we ship them all over the world, not just in the US to investors, but we ship them all over the world. Other questions or comments?
I had one, Dr. Rayburn. Two of the largest companies in Michigan now are Rocket and United Wholesale Mortgage. Which would you say you're more closely aligned in terms of one being more retail and one more of a wholesale level of mortgages? And what are some like unique value propositions to mTrade versus like one of those closest Michigan competitors?
Well, no, we're a software company. So we don't compete with either one of them. They're complementary to us. In fact, they sell loans to investors being the big banks on our platform. So United Wholesale is completely a wholesale and they have been anyway. They may change wholesale and correspondent platform. And historically, Quicken Loans, which is now Rocket Loans, they changed the name. Dan Gilbert, who's the chairman, and Bill Emerson, who used to be the CEO and now he's vice chair of Rock Financial, they sold their company to Quicken, as in the tax software people, and they bought it back and got the right to use that name for some period of time. I'm almost positive that's why they changed their name. Anyway, having said all that, they're primarily a retail lender, a retail, not brick and mortar, but direct to consumer. They were a pioneer in that area, and they've done fantastic. I mean, they got one of the best operations I've ever seen. In fact, Gilbert's got he owns the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's got a basketball court, half a court in his office building downtown Detroit. I admire them greatly. I admire United as well. I'm just closer. I'm closer to them and know them a little bit better. But anyway, they're both great companies. They're great companies, and neither one of them are competitors of ours. We are purely a software company. We don't do mortgages. We just our people buy and sell mortgages on our software. That's it. Okay, let's move on. I can tell stories all day. In fact, the lecture is limited to an hour and a half. And if I had to speak all day, I'd be ready right now, but I had to prep for an hour and a half, had to prep for 2 or 3 days for an hour and a half. Okay, here we go. Let's keep talking. We need the cash to pay for it, and that's a mortgage. We've got all these different perspectives on a house, and we need to pay for it. All right. I want to talk to the students for a moment about a vision for your life and what you're going to do and that sort of thing. And what you're looking at here is you are looking at John F. Kennedy standing at Rice University Stadium making a speech. Now, the reason he made it at Rice University Stadium, I feel confident, is his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, was from that part of Texas. And basically, here's what happened. The Russians had a satellite in space, Sputnik, and we were behind. And so Kennedy had Johnson confer with Wernher von Braun, who was the foremost rocket scientist in the world, who was at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. This is you can get this on NASA's website, looking back in the archives. And he stood up. We didn't know how to get anybody to the moon, let alone get them back. Kennedy stood up and said, we're going to go to the moon and we're going to get them back. And not only that, we're going to do it before the end of the decade. You'll see the quote there. He said it in 1962. He'd already spotted the scientists 2 years. All right. He'd already given up 2 years, and they got it done in 1969. And he said, we're going to do it. And we're going to do what needs to be done. And that is a vision. And it's got a timeline to it, and it's got specific metrics. And so what I challenge you tonight to do and think about is, what do you want to do with your life, students? You've been studying and somebody else has told you what to do all of your life. You've gone through K through 12 and you've done this and that and the other and that sort of thing. And one of these days, you're going to graduate. I know all your relatives be proud when that day comes. All right. But basically, you're going to graduate. And what are you going to do? So we're going to talk a little bit about those things tonight. Okay, let's talk about the vision of you. And we want to talk a little bit about that. There's been a great book. I highly encourage you to read it. It's by Clayton Christensen, he's recently passed away as a professor at Harvard. How will you measure your life? What do you want to do? It's going to be 40 to 50 years. What do you want to do? How do you define meaning? And I'm going to tell you mine. All right, because most of the faculty at the University of Mississippi thinks I am absolutely crazy. They think I'm crazy for giving up tenure. I mean, you heard the comments, Dean. All right, they think I'm crazy for giving up tenure. They think I work crazy hours. I want to tell you what my objective is. My objective is to make Oxford, Mississippi, the next Austin, Texas. Exactly how will we do that? I want to create, with the help of a bunch of people, 10,000 tech and tech-related jobs in Oxford. I'm going to give you the scorecard tonight about exactly where we are. We've created a bunch, and Oxford is booming. All these bankers, investment bankers from New York from Manhattan come to Oxford, and they say, I cannot believe this is Mississippi. I said, you're not in Mississippi. You go 10 miles outside of town, you'd be in Mississippi. This is Oxford. And so, and I will say this, my model is what Quicken has done in Detroit, downtown Detroit. Dan Gilbert and Bill Emerson, They've done a phenomenal job in downtown Detroit. And I went to see Emerson, and he kind of laid out a model of what they've done. My goal is to create with my wife 10,000 tech and tech-related jobs. What you need to do is be thinking about what you want to do. And we're going to talk about that tonight. We're not going to talk about me. I'll make some references. We're going to talk about you. Any questions or comments before we get going? All right, a couple of books for reading I highly recommend for you. These books have been out somewhere between 2 and 5 years, depending on the book. There's a professor at Wharton I highly recommend to you. His name is Adam Grant, and he wrote a book called Originals, and it's about entrepreneurs. And depending on how you want to pronounce his name, I've heard it several ways, Peter Thiel, Thole, but anyway, whatever. 0 to 1 is a book about his approach to building companies. And we're going to talk about that very thing. How do you get an idea? How do you grow an idea? And how do you make an idea happen? And we're going to do this in the context of entrepreneurship. Now, some of you say, well, I don't know all this stuff. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you, what do you think the success rate is? The success rate, I mean this with no disrespect, professors. What do you think the success rate is of entrepreneurial ventures led by professors? Nearly 0. And it took me, and I'll tell you why in a second, I have a theory about it. But a professor is looking for the perfect answer, the exact answer. An entrepreneur is looking for an answer that is good enough. And those are very different. And when you get to good enough, you got to move on. You do not have the luxury of time. And when I was a professor, I had the luxury of time. I don't have that now. All right. Questions or comments before we go on? Okay. Any others? Okay. Here we go. Along the way, you got to have fun. These are 2 of my board members on the right-hand side. We're at a wine tasting in an art gallery, and that's my wife next to me and 2 of my board members. And we'll talk about that. When you create jobs and create opportunity and create community, you need to have fun. Now, all of our employees today have to have one community activity. Whatever they're doing, they have to be involved in at least one community activity. Why is that? The turnover rate in the tech world is out of sight. All right. Depending on whose study you read, it's somewhere between 18 and 20%. It's important to make your employees feel like they're a part of the community. How do you do that? There are many ways, but one way is to get them involved in some kind of community-based activity, raising money for the United Way as one example, raising money for other charitable organizations, doing a golf tournament that benefits some cause you're interested in. These are all wonderful things that bind your employees to your community, your company, and that means they are bound to you or tighter to you. Very important. And so as you go through your journey of the next 40 or 50 years, if you don't like what you're doing, you need to change. Life is short. You're going to wake up one day and your children are going to be 25. When your dean was in Oxford as my student, he was asking me about my children. They were little. I mean, they were like little. Now they're like grown in graduate school, all that, and it happened in a blink of an eye. And so you need to have fun. You need to enjoy that journey. Any questions before we move forward? All right. We're going to talk about really getting rolling. Let's talk about innovation. Now, some of you don't know life before an iPod. In fact, some of you don't even know what an iPod is. All right. You're so on the iPhone. I want you to know something. The iPod was not the first music player. It was not the first music player. There were lots of MP3 players. The Rio Diamond, the Creative Labs Movo. Those were MP3. You don't even know what I'm talking about. That was a predecessor to an iPod. Steve Jobs essentially just copied that and made it better. And to go along with that, the iPhone was like, nobody wanted one of those. They wanted a Motorola StarTAC flip phone. That's what they wanted. That's what they had. I know you had one of those if you're my age. You say, you're not that old. Okay, I get it. All right. but you had some kind of flip phone. Your dean, I know he had a flip phone. All right. He did. All right. We all did. That was like the cool phone. And then this iPhone thing came out and they just like own the market. And I know some of you have a philosophical difference. And so you've got an Android phone, but most of the developed world is running an iPhone. They just are. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just they've got a huge market share. That was not an original innovation. It was an improvement. It's called second mover advantage, not first mover, second mover. And the research shows that second movers do well than first movers most of the time. It depends on the market. Now, the COVID vaccine is obviously all, they're first movers. All that stuff's breaking new ground. They're first movers. And I have no idea what the price of the COVID vaccine is. Where I live, you just show up. If you can get on a list, you just show up, stick your arm out, and you get it. There's no, well, other than your taxes, there's no price for the COVID vaccine. And so that is doing something new. Now, in our universities, we have research and development. And universities talk about how they're committed to entrepreneurship and that sort of thing, and that's all great. The reality is they are committed to research, period. And it is the development that creates jobs. And if you have not partnered with an entity to commercialize your research, I would highly encourage you as a university to do so. I don't know what your research agenda is. Most universities tend to focus. At the University of Mississippi, we have the only, until recent times, we have the only legalized marijuana farm in the United States. In fact, when I was an early faculty member there in the early 90s, they had a fire at the marijuana fields. It's where the DEA grows all their marijuana. They had a fire and all the students were out there up on the side of the fences watching that fire. I'm sure that's what they were doing. All right. And that was in the early 90s. Our pharmacy school is really the sort of the capstone school at the university. And the university is really focused on some of their research efforts. Your university probably has too. Whatever that is, you need to, why am I covering this? Because this is where you get ideas. This is where you learn about the kinds of things that add value and the kinds of things that generate ideas to do new things. But it's the taking the idea or the research done at a university and then turning that into a product first and then a company. And then that's where the job creation occurs. Many of you probably watch Shark Tank. I don't even like Shark Tank because it just drives me crazy. And the reason it drives me crazy is twofold. One is they're generally about product building and not company building. And two, they give up a lot of their equity for a little money. It drives me insane. So I just turn it off and don't watch it. I mean, I watch for entertainment, but other than that, I don't. And so we're going to talk about those things tonight and talk about taking an idea and building a company. So let's stop for a second. Questions or comments? Any questions or comments? All right. I'm going to move on and talk about types of jobs. Another book I highly recommend to you is another Christensen book, Clayton Christensen, The Prosperity Paradox. He talks about a lot of different types of innovation, but really what I would like for you to focus on are local jobs and global jobs. Global jobs can be done anywhere. These are, well, you've seen this in Detroit, all right? I want to talk about what you've seen in Detroit and some auto aspects that are local to Detroit. It's fascinating. So the manufacturing of an automobile can be done anywhere. You're looking at access to parts and labor, skilled labor, of course. But it can be done, like we have plants in Mexico and China and Europe and all over the world, all right? Local jobs are jobs that can only be done in the local area. And you've got some unique things that you're doing in Detroit that are very unique to your area. For example, the technology that you are developing around those cars, the dashboards, some of the self-driving stuff, that is done there. Now, I know Waymo and a lot of these other companies may be in California, but there's a heavy Detroit component to that. And those tend to be local jobs. The design of that new application and that sort of thing tends to be a local job. And so that's the kind of jobs you want to create. But we want to create local jobs in Oxford, Mississippi around fintech. I'm currently working with some folks to write the economic development plan for the state. And we're probably going to focus on 3 or 4 things. You got to focus, because if you focus on everything, you focus on nothing. You've got to focus. So what will we probably focus on? I think there's a huge area, and there's a research university called Mississippi State. We'll focus on ag tech, probably at Mississippi State. They've got a big ag budget. There's a lot to do in food and food supply and all of ag tech. You may know, a lot of you like apples and you eat apples. You know that little sticker on the apple? If you remember that little sticker that's on every apple, well, that tells you the tree. They can track the tree. And so therefore the entire food supply of that apple. That's very important if you have any kind of poisoning or anything else, or any kind of disease that is transmitted through apples. And so there's a lot of opportunity in ag tech. We'll probably also focus on sea tech and space tech, the John Stennis Space Center, which is where most of the rockets are tested. It's all, it's a political, it was put down there because of politics, probably. I don't know, speculation on my part, but it's there. It's where they test, it's down in South Mississippi. It's where they test rockets. And so we'll focus on space tech there and sea tech as well, a lot of similarities. And so in Detroit, in Michigan, where you are located, there's a lot of opportunity in mortgages, because you've got some world mortgage leaders right there. Rocket, United, Wholesale. There's another one in Ann Arbor. I just can't get the names. Willie Newman's company. I just, it's in the database, but the access speed is slowed down as I've gotten older. And so having said all that, there's a lot of opportunity in the Detroit area. And opportunity many times tends to be local specific. All right. Why is this so important? Because a manufacturing job creates one other new job, and an innovation job, in Morietti's book, he lays out the math. It creates 5 new jobs. So what happens? You get a job as an engineer or a programmer in one of these companies. The first thing you have to do when you get out of school, because you all have been on, I really love your curriculum. You go to school a semester and you go to work study a semester. I love that. And so you probably have most of your expenses and your education paid. I know somebody, oh, you're crazy. I got student loans, all that stuff. Most highly educated technical graduates, when they get out, they need to go buy them a new car. All right, you got to go buy a new car. And they go spend a bunch of money, which is great, because a car dealer has got a bunch of employees and they all make money, and they go get their hair done at the hair house, and everybody had money just turns over and over and over and over. Okay, that creates jobs, and that's great. An innovation job creates 5 other new jobs. Let's stop. Questions or comments? Okay, on we go. So I want to talk with the students and share a few thoughts about deciding to become an entrepreneur. If you want your own deal, people say, well, I love it because I don't have a boss. You're kidding yourself. Every one of your clients is your boss. All right. They're your boss. If you want to know the real reason I am in Manhattan tonight, is I've got a client that said, I can't go in their building. After the COVID happened, I can't go in their building. But he said, I want to have a face-to-face meeting with you every month. I expect you to come up here. We'll go to a restaurant and we'll sit out at lunchtime and we'll visit. You have got a lot of bosses. Your clients that spend a lot of money with you are your bosses, and they are very demanding. So get that out of your head. You start thinking about building a company, it becomes your life. It needs to be your passion, and focus is critical. Where do you want to be, and what are the natural areas of concentration, like Detroit? Mortgages, auto, and auto tech. The auto tech world is booming. When we test drove a Tesla. I don't own a Tesla. I drive a Ford F-150 pickup, And my wife drives a nice car, but I drive a pickup. All right. And so we test drove a Tesla. It's like sitting in a rocket ship, in a spaceship, in an airplane. It's awesome. And every car out there is going to want that experience. And so there's just, in my opinion, tremendous opportunity in auto tech. So how do you get an idea? Think about a problem. What bugs you? And all of us have got things that bug us. I mean, really, really bug us. Dollar Shave Club. Somebody got bugged about their shaving. All right. They're just idea after idea after idea. How many times have you said, I wish I had some way to tell who was at my front door? And that's where Nest came along. And those deals happen every day. What bugs you? That's an idea. And then is it a big market? Can you make money executing on that idea? Is it large? Are there a lot of inefficiencies in that market? And are you creating this new market, which is really, really difficult to create a new market? Are you improving an existing one? I would highly recommend trying to do the latter for my first deal. Let's stop. Questions or comments? Anyone want to ask a question before I move on? I get rolling and I just get carried away and tell stories and cover. As your dean knows, I have lots of stories and a little content. All right.
Dr. Rayburn, this is Dr. Wallace, Christine Wallace again. Are there certain, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, are there certain jobs that develop more jobs than, I mean, for instance, if I was to open a hair salon, you know, that's going to grow so many, the money's going to move around to so many other and create so many other jobs. If I create a high-tech company, you know, are there certain types of businesses that do better than others?
By do business others, you mean in terms of job creation?
Yes.
Well, sure. I mean, I think any type industry or type company that's got high fixed cost, that when you get above those fixed costs, it's got huge margins. Those companies are generally going to create tremendous opportunities. There's nothing that will lose as much money as a software company below break even. I mean, they just bleed like crazy. There were times when we were bleeding $1 million a month at FNC, but you get above break even, and they just print money. So your contribution margin, very important. I mean, it's just in that business. Pharmaceuticals are very much like that. I have no idea what it costs them to develop, what it costs Pfizer or any of the others, starts with an M, I've just forgotten it, or Johnson & Johnson just got their one-shot deal approved. I have no idea what their development costs were, but my guess is their variable cost to produce that is like nothing, because I don't know that for a fact. But and they're going to just print money above their break even, and so those kind of businesses create the most jobs in general. Other questions or comments? All right. So, by the way, I go by just for those of you that know, and I appreciate you calling me Dr. Rayburn and that sort of thing. I've been so long out of the university. I go by Bill, and I'll think you want me to operate on you if you call me doctor. But being that as it may, I just go by Bill, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the respect, but I go by Bill. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. All right, so now you've got you an idea, and by the way, I talked to somebody the other day. They want to test like K through 12 children on are they in the classroom, just knowing where they are. That's a great idea. It's a simple concept. That's a great idea. And they want to send a QR code to their phone, have QR readers all over the place. And so when you go in a classroom, they know exactly who's in that classroom. Classroom safety is a huge deal. All right. It's a huge deal. I mean, when I was a professor, I never, ever, ever in my life thought about, or it didn't even remotely crossed my mind, somebody bringing a gun to a college class. All right. If I were a professor today, I would think about that. All right. I mean, it's just, the world has changed. And we need to know these ideas about safety and that sort of thing, I think will become very important. These K through 12 school systems need to know who's in what class, exactly where they are. It's a safety issue. It's not a liberty issue or anything. It's a safety issue. And it's very important. And and I hear a lot of school administrators talking about those issues. And so if you're a software person, just think about how you can do that better and know exactly where those children are located. All right, I'm going to move on unless there's a question. Okay, let's move on and talk about some other issues. I think I've done, okay, there's 13. All right, I've got an idea for a new business. Now, most people think the idea is a be all to end all. All right, they're a dime a dozen. All right, I mean, they are a dime a dozen. Ideas are. But what you have to do is take that idea and make it into a real business. So how do you do that? How do you take an idea and turn it into whatever it is and turn it into a real business? Now, you get a little opinionated when you do this. And I'll tell you why. My friends on the faculty at Ole Miss made fun of me. They made fun of me for giving up tenure and the whole deal and doing that. And your dean was there when I was in the process of doing that, and he knows they talked about me. They thought I was crazy, which I might be, but that's another discussion. And so, having said all that, you have to decide it's what you want to do, and this becomes your life. So if you're going to do a 40-year plan, everybody say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it 4 or 5 years, and I'm going to sell it and get rich. And it doesn't quite work that way. I mean, it might, but that's not normal. All right. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about the discussion, how you start. First thing you have to do, everybody talks about, I've got this idea for a business. It only becomes real when you go out and raise money from investors. Now, there's several ways to do that. One is, and I'm going to talk about bootstrapping. So when Dennis Tosh and I started FNC, the first 4 years, I didn't take a salary from the company. We were still at the university, and we had a seminar company, and we were doing very well. And we were using all of our seminar money to put in the software company. And that's called, when you use your own money, and that's called bootstrapping. And it was very strenuous. But what that allows you to do is hang on to your equity. There are only 3 sources of money, only 3. You got 3 sources, and that's it. The first source is you can take on debt. The second source is you can take on equity. Or the third source is you can go out and raise that money. You can raise it from your operations, or generate from operations. So debt, equity, and coming in from operations. That's it. All right. Okay. So if you can't bootstrap it, you get your friends and family to invest. Now you talk about things getting serious when your mama and your daddy and your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and your close friends put their money in your company. The world just got serious. All right. Because you're taking their money and doing your deal. All right. Now when it turns out great, everybody's happy. I mean, they all love it. All right. In FNC, our investors, their internal rate of return was 35% for 15 years. And 35% a year on your invested money, everybody loves you. Now, if you don't make that money, they don't love you. You have to leave town, or you got to go bye-bye. But you got to make it work. All right. And then they're what are called angels. The reason they're called angels, these are larger, wealthy, larger financially, wealthy individuals. And the reason they're called angels is because about the time you're about to go broke, go bankrupt, they show up with a bag of cash. And that's why they're called angels. I mean, not literally, but close to it. And they invest. And then you may go to what's called professional money and do a seed round. This is a smaller round. Typically, this is a venture capital firm. We have never taken venture capital money. We raised $53 million to do the FNC deal. and all this public information, $53 million from individuals in Mississippi. And we raised 38 for mTrade, all from individuals in Mississippi. And so we never had to go past the angels. And the reason that's important, I'm old school. I'm a big believer in hanging on to as much of your equity as you can. And why? Because you're going to do the work. And when you get ready to sell the company, you want the reward, not the other investors, because they've invested cash or money. And you've invested blood, sweat, and tears in your life. And so you, as the entrepreneur, should reap the financial reward. That's not the way it is in most companies for most entrepreneurs for their first deal. They don't get to do that. Any questions or comments before we go on? Okay. Now, if you take what's called professional money, institutional money is what I call it. There's an A round. You probably only have a business plan. You may not have a product done. A B round, you've got a product done, but maybe only a few customers. There's a C round, and that C round is, you've got a product, you've got some customers, you're growing out your market, and in a D round or an E round, you're leaning up the company. You're getting margin expansion, that revenue is growing, and your EBITDA, your earnings are growing much faster than your revenue growth because you're leaning the business. You're minimizing expenses. How long does it take? To build a real business takes at least, in my opinion, 10 years. Inc. magazine says between 8 and 12, depending on the article you read. Some of you like music. I want to tell you about somebody in Mississippi that you know their name when I tell you, and they're all about music. His name is Hartley Peavy. You know about Peavy Electronics, Peavy amplifiers. If you're into music, Peavy amplifiers are that's like the max. All right. Hartley Peavy told me himself. I said, Hartley, Jimmy Buffett. If you like Jimmy Buffett, some of you like. Well, I don't know if it's country music or I don't know what country music is anymore. Anyway, if you like country music, Peavy makes all the Jimmy Buffett stuff. He's got a Jimmy Buffett line. Anyway, I asked Hartley Peavy, I said, how long did it take you to get your company cash flow positive where you knew you were going to make it? He didn't blink. He said 13 years. All right. So it is a journey. It's really not a destination. It's a journey. Any questions or comments before we go on? Things you want to ask?
Hi, Bill. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, when you started your journey and I am assuming that the idea that you brought in with your company is you're the pioneer of that idea. What are the hiccups that you face, and how did you vet your decision and come up with a plan?
So what are the obstacles we faced, and how do we make a decision and come up with a plan? Well, you see my hair is white. Okay, it's turned white. It used to be blonde. And so what that means is I have made every mistake in the book. So you've got to be able to recover from your mistakes. There'll be deals that you should have gotten, you worked hard and you should have gotten, and you didn't. And there'll be deals that you worked hard and you should have gotten, and you did. And there'll be deals that you didn't deserve, you didn't work on, you didn't deserve them, but you got them anyway. You were fortunate. And we've had all three happen to us. So what kind of things happen? Number one, college professors, and I'm one, I'm talking about the brethren of the university. And when I say brethren, I'm assuming female and male colleagues. They tend to be very emotional. They hide it very well, but you get to decision making and they tend to be very emotional. We had many screaming arguments at FNC. Now we've sort of limited that. We just kind of limit that a little bit when you have to, when you're married to your co-founder. And so we've worked through that, coming to an optimal, not necessarily perfect, but an optimal solution is really one of the biggest obstacles in how founders get along in a division of roles. You can only have one boss for one area of the company. That's it. Somebody's got to decide. I mean, I've seen the co-CEO model and the co-this and the co-that, but that generally does not work well. You need, and the research shows that, you need one. And by the way, my wife runs, she's president and chief revenue officer. She runs revenue. And that's the most important function in the whole software company. That's the most important one. And so the biggest problem we had was getting along at FNC. We yell and scream at each other, but everybody knew they had the right answer because they had all the answers. And by the way, I was in that boat too. And one day I told my co-founder, Bob Dorsey, he didn't want to pay sales commissions. And I said, okay, Dr. Dorsey, we're going to do it your way. He said, no, we're not. I said, why not? He said, I have no courage in my conviction. Now, Dorsey's the smartest person I've ever met. His major professor won the Nobel Prize. And so, you know, you've just got to come to accommodation of how you get along. And that brings me to another point. The team is very important. You can't do it by yourself. You have to build a team. And I'm going to talk about that in the next few minutes. And what you have to do is be candid about your abilities. I know everybody thinks they can do everything, and professors are the worst at thinking that because they've had to do well to get through school. A professor is someone who is exceptional at assimilating disparate knowledge and making meaning out of it and that sort of thing. And that's great. That'll get you great grades. It will not get you a customer. What will get you a customer is likability and a solution that solves their problems. And so drive is the most important skill you can have as an entrepreneur, getting it done. Creativity is the second most important thing. And intelligence is number 3. And it's not really the kind of intelligence we measure in school. It's practical intelligence. There's been a lot of research done on intelligence, practical intelligence, understanding how people think and tick and make decisions. And so, you know, that's very important. One of the other challenges, I know you asked about the time, and I'm telling you how to make a watch. One of the other challenges that we faced is I'm a big believer in lean finance. What does lean, L-E-A-N, what does lean finance mean? Only raise the money you need. Don't get too much money. Go out there and raise it when you need it. Now, it's a little riskier, but just raise what you need. And I'm a big believer in that. And it makes you much more efficient. It keeps you focused on what's important because you're frugal with those expense dollars. And it's just you wind up with a better company, get more profit margins, all that. And so that was another challenge. And really the last thing is, I mean, these are the big ones. There are a bunch of little ones, a big one. And the last thing is you got to listen to your customer. A lot of people have a product focus. You know, let me give you an example. People say, well, what does your software do? I'll tell you what we do. We increase our firm's operating leverage. There are 2 kinds of leverage, well, 3 kinds of leverage. There's combined leverage, there's financial leverage and operating leverage. Combined leverage times financial leverage times operating leverage equals combined leverage. They're multiplicative. And we increase the firm's operating leverage. Like we'll increase it 3, 4, 5 times. That's what we do. We just use software to do that. We increase their internal rate of return, and we just use software to do that. And so what we're really doing is we're demonstrating to our customer how we make them more profitable. I think if I had understood that earlier on and how much value I really added, we'd have been profitable far quicker at FNC. It took us 5 years to go cash flow positive, and we've been profitable far quicker. Lois understood that instinctively. I mean, she may not have couched it in the terms of operating leverage or anything like that, but she said you were adding, once she understood what we did, you were adding tremendous value to these clients, and that means we need to go up in price. And I'll tell you a true story, and then I'll move on. I was in my office one day, and one of my professors from the University of Memphis called me. The Memphis airport is the home of FedEx, and FedEx wanted to fly directly to China. And so Memphis needed to put in a big runway, and they needed a study done, a noise abatement study done on all the properties affected by this new runway. And I had a professor call me, Dick Evans, and he said, former professor of mine, he said, Bill, we need you to be with us to do a study for the airport authority. I said, why do you want me? He said, we want you to present it to the airport authority. The press is going to be there and they're going to have all their counsel there. They're going to be grilling people and all that stuff. And we want you to take the bullets and make the presentation, get the deal done, basically. And I said, how much do I get? He said, we're going to charge $6,000 and you get a third. I said, okay. And on the way up there, I said, I'm going to charge $12,000. And on the way in the room, I said, I'm going to charge $36,000. And so the press was there, and they were all lawyered up, everybody, because it was very controversial. And the TV cameras were there, and so I laid it out. It was an open meeting because it's a public body, it's the airport authority, and so I laid that $36,000 on them. And James McGee, however you now pronounce it, was chairman of the airport authority at the time, and they took him about a minute to take my deal. Now, when somebody takes your deal in 1 minute, that means it's something wrong. So I said, Mr. McGee, you mind if I ask why you took my proposal so quick? He said, well, Bill, actually, he said, Dr. Rayburn. That's why I didn't like Dr. Rayburn from that point on. He said, Dr. Rayburn, he said, the noise abatement engineers were in here. They were studying the noise abatement zones and mapping those out. And we were studying the valuation of the property and the impacts from noise on property values on like 5,000 parcels being taken. He said they were in here and they quoted us $152,000, and we took that and we thought you were going to charge us the same thing. So this idiot talking to you tonight left the difference in 36 and 152 on the table, did the same exact work and took a big discount. So the first thing an entrepreneur wants to do is discount their price. That is absolutely insane. The word in Mississippi is stupid. And so what I encourage you to do, and by the way, a number of magazines, Inc. magazine, a number of academic articles have documented that one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make, early entrepreneurs, initial entrepreneurs, is they don't charge enough. Because the first thing the prospect does is they start pushing back on price, and most people cave and go down. You know why they put the no solicitation sign up on the door, right? Because they bought too much already, okay? They bought too much already. It's a great prospect. They bought too much already. And so what you have to do is understand the value proposition of whatever you have to your prospect, their value. What are you going to do for them to make their business better? Make them more money, save them more money. And once you understand that, that will give you a better feel for how you ought to price what you have. So let's stop. Questions or comments? That's kind of you've kind of hit a nerve there, because I still remember that presentation. All right. I mean, it's just painful. It's a painful lesson. And my wife is over here to the side listening to all this. She just got a big grin on her face. All right. Any questions or comments? All right. So you got to know what's important for your business, how you keep score. Like a balance sheet for a software company is like crazy. Like you don't even pay attention to it except for the debt. Why? Accountants have this concept. It's called it's the principle of conservatism. So when you put an asset on the balance sheet, what you want to do is put it on there for the lower of cost or market. So you spend $2 million developing some piece of software and it's worth 200 million. You put it on your balance sheet at 2. And they say, well, you'll get the earnings and that sort of thing. Well, that's true, but it'll be lagged out over several quarters or years. And so the balance sheet is very misleading, except of course for the financial instruments. So if you got some debt, that'll be stated at market. But in terms of the assets, and so that whacks out the statement of the equity, because remember, there's a basic accounting equation: assets equal liabilities plus equity. And so it whacks out the equity valuation on the balance sheet. So we keep up, well, in the software business, our two key statements are the income statement, statement of cash flows. And as you know, the cash flow statement has got operating cash flows, financing cash flows, and investing cash flows. For most software companies, it's only cash flow from operations. And so it's really important to understand what's important. Now, if I were running a bank, a financial institution, then the balance sheet would be most important. And how does your industry keep score? Is it transactions? Is it eyeballs? Is it attention time? How do you keep score? Because the way you decide you're going to keep score will tell you where you are on your journey. All right. I'm going to tell you where we are on our, or I am on my journey. We are on our journey in just a second. Any questions before we go on? Comments? All right, let me put this up here. All right. I look at the world as a mosaic. You got to build a complementary team. You got to find people that do different things than what you do. And it's all about a team. You cannot do it all. Okay. Now, my co-founders at FNC, Dennis Tosh was one of the most organized people I have ever met. Very organized. All right. My wife is very organized. Me, let me tell you the extent of my organization. Now, you would think being a finance person, and I am some organized, but I'm also some unorganized. But here's what I do. Every morning, I get up, I go to work early. I go to work, I want to be at work at 4 a.m. I'm a morning person. I want to have dinner at 6 p.m. I'm very habitual. I want to be at work at 4 a.m. I get a 4x6 note card, and on one side, I write down all the things I have to do that day. And on the other side, I write down all the things I would like to do that day. And that's my organization. Now, my wife's got everything's in an Outlook calendar, and it's like, you know where you're going to be and who you're going to talk to and everything like 3 months out. I don't operate like that. I operate by the day. So you got to have a complementary team. All right. And just because somebody disagrees with you does not make them bad. That means they disagree with you. That's all. So what I would do is take a piece of paper and draw a line in the middle of it down it. And I'd write down on the left side all the things I like to do, on the right side all the things I couldn't stand to do. And you need to find people that are very good at whatever you can't stand to do. And that needs to be your team. And as you put that together, that company will start to take shape. That is very difficult for emotionally immature people to do. It is very difficult because you've got to take dissenting opinion on areas of which you know very little about. And that's one of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur. And you got to trust those people, because the reason you put them on your team is they know more about things you know very little about. Any questions or comments? All right. Here's our team. These are real mTrade employees. This is us. All right. Now, these people are all highly educated. They all smart folks. All right. Many of them have been with us for a long time. I know they look mighty young, but they not. Okay. And so they've been with us a long time. Many of them were with us at FNC. And in fact, almost our entire management team was at FNC and came over. All right. And this is us. And we want to be very specific about who we are. Our mission is to help people achieve homeownership faster. And the way we do that is to help that local bank or that local mortgage company sell that loan quickly so they can make another loan to somebody else. And we when we have problems, and we have, we face this issue of COVID, what do you do? I mean, we need to be in the same, we really need to be in the same building to process these loans. But that's really not right. That wasn't the right thing to do. We had to come up with we sort of had a plan to work completely remote, but we had to figure out, because that was the right thing to do. We could not put these employees at risk. That was the right thing to do. And we want to accomplish things every day, so we make every day matter. And basically, we got a bunch of get it done, type A. We got some type B thinkers and that sort of thing, but we got a bunch of type A, get it done, let's make it happen kind of people. And that's who we are. And we're a collection of those. And we try to add value by having a very diverse group of people. These board members, this is the mTrade board. And I'll start really on the bottom with Angela Woods on the right-hand side. She was the head of the Girl Scouts. She got a law degree from Georgia, and she's the person, when I want to talk about employee issues, she's COO of a big foster home operation in North Carolina. And she was CEO of the Girl Scouts, the Girl Scout Council in Memphis. I was chair of the finance committee when my daughter was coming up through the ranks, Girl Scouts. And she just smart, all right? And she's very wise, and she gives me great counsel. We've raised all of our money in the Farringtons' living room. They're just two well-connected entrepreneurs, and we've raised it in their literally raised it in their living room. $53 million at FNC and 38 at mTrade. And Bob Dorsey was a co-founder from FNC, a professor, and he's retired, but he is very wise. He chairs our security committee. Hunter Carpenter is a private equity guy in Dallas, and he has a unique background. He walked on to the Ole Miss basketball team, and after the first semester, got a scholarship. He has an undergrad, master's degree in accounting, and a law degree. And some of you may know Stevens Inc. in Little Rock. It's a regional broker dealer. He was their main deal guy for a long time. John Koch built Charter One Bank. Those of you in the Detroit area and in Cleveland area know Charter One. He and his brother John and Bud Koch owned that bank. It was the biggest sale of a bank in the United States to the Royal Bank. It went to the Royal Bank of Scotland. Lois Lovelady runs sales and marketing. She is my wife, but when we go to work, she's my business partner. All right. So what I'm trying to show you in all this is we have a very different board. They have very different backgrounds, and they bring different things to the table. It is really, if you think about it, it's a mosaic, just like our employees are a mosaic. Mosaic meaning they have different skills that they bring to the table, and when you put them all together, they paint a beautiful picture. All right, now to 19. All right, two concepts on this page. One is, I want you to think about customer lifetime value versus customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost you to acquire a customer? So you're going to start a company. You need to think pricing is very difficult to figure out. How much does it cost you to acquire a customer? And then, what's that customer worth over their lifetime? And you've got to make sure that their lifetime value is way more than their acquisition cost. So that comes out of the book 0 to 1. I highly recommend that to you to read. That's Peter Thiel's book. And it's a lot of thoughts about how to build a business. Any questions or comments about that? I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right, here's our goal. Our goal was to create 10,000 jobs in Oxford in 10 years. And to do that, and we got about 700 to 800 real software jobs in town, and that means we've added another 4,000 to 5,000 jobs. I mean, Oxford's booming. Prices are California prices in Oxford. They are out of sight. They're in the stratosphere. All right. And so we need to get, to 1,800 to 2,000 real software jobs, because remember, one innovation job adds 5 others. And so this will get us to 10,000. I want to do that before I end my career. I mean, I'll be very, I'm 62. I think maybe I got another 10 years in me, 8 to 10. All right, doing this. My wife says we're not going to do it that long, which she's probably right. But that's my goal, because Mississippi is the poorest state in the nation. And we do not need these people leaving. They get highly educated. Amazon, I mean, the going pay for a software, somebody getting a computer science or information systems degree coming right out of Ole Miss or Mississippi State, one of our universities, that they're going to start with an undergraduate degree. They're going to start at about 80 to 85,000. That may not be a bunch of money in Detroit, but I'm going to tell you, in Mississippi, that's a bunch of money. You get a master's degree, another 10,000 on top of that. Amazon will pay them right out of school 125 to 150. All right, they got to move, or they did before COVID, and so this, it brings my biggest joys is to see people out in restaurants that work for the company or used to work for FNC out spending money. And you go in the restaurants and you'll see a lot of these people, and that's fantastic because that helps the local economy. And we need that. And you know, Bill Emerson and Dan Gilbert have done amazing things for Detroit. I mean, the Western Book Cadillac, just so you know, I know the area. I've been there many times. The Western Book Cadillac right downtown and Restaurant Roast in that hotel is awesome. And there's just some great places down there. And that's primarily because of the folks at Rocket Mortgage. And a lot of help from a lot of people, but they've done a great job. Any questions or comments? And so if I go to the next slide, another book I highly encourage you to read is Originals, How Nonconformists Move the World. I highly recommend this Adam Grant's book. It's great reading. It's great airplane reading. It's great nighttime reading. It'll be exciting if you're interested in being an entrepreneur. And so if you have insomnia, it's not a cure for insomnia. It'll probably make it worse. And so I recommend that to you. Any questions or comments before we move on? All right. Where do we go from here? Well, I think you need to lay out a plan for your life. What do you want to do for the next 40, 50 years? There are a lot of people that are just miserable in their jobs. You don't need to do that. All right. In my first job as a professor, I was miserable. I went to a small school and I went off and got my Ph.D. and I wanted to go back to it. And I did, and I was miserable. And I did a real estate development. My daddy was a real estate developer, and I grew up in that environment. And I went and did a deal, and the university didn't like me doing it. They went in my office 8 to 5. That's just not me. I'd go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. Still do. Go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I work all day and love it. But I want to get out and mix and mingle in the business community. All right, and visit and talk, figure out what's going on. And so you have to decide what's right for you. And you have to find people who are complementary to build a team. And when you go raise that first dollar and you look those investors in the eye and you take their money, your deal will become real. So how do you get started? You have an idea, talk to everybody you can about your idea. There's this old tale about don't share your idea, somebody's going to steal your idea. If there's very little original knowledge in the world, all right? And so they're not going to steal your idea. Tell them about it. They make it better. Listen to everything they tell you that's wrong with it. Write all that down. Keep up with it. And then because what that does is that's the distillation process that makes your idea better and better. All right. I'm about done. Dean, any questions or comments, things you want to ask me? Things you want to know? I'm pretty wide open. And by the way, almost all of my growth has been organic as opposed to acquisitive. The two kinds of growth. You can grow by acquiring other companies. That's called acquisitive growth, or you can grow organically. You can sell your product to clients in the marketplace. And almost all of my growth has been organic. We've done 3 deals, and I paid $3 million for each deal. The first deal was a winner. It's probably worth $100 million. The second deal was probably worth about $3 million. And the third deal, I went out in the parking lot and stacked up $3 million, not literally, but it felt like it. Stacked up $3 million and put a match to it. Okay, that was stupid. And so you tend to focus on your mistakes as opposed to your big wins. And one of my board members is Farrington, who you saw a picture earlier. She came up to me at a board meeting and put her arm through mine and said, "You keep doing deals. I think you spent $9 million and made 103. I think that's a pretty good return." So having said all that, you have to figure out what you want to do and plot your journey. So Dean, I'll take a couple of questions, and then if anybody has any, and then I'm done.
Thank you. What an inspiring, persuasive presentation. I wish we could welcome you on campus and show you our R&D facilities here. We are pretty big on the autonomous vehicle, AV, electrified vehicle, and robotics. And we have pretty outstanding research facility on campus. In the university, the R&D is under the Dean of Graduate Programs and Sponsored Research. So I hope you and your wife can come and visit us. But let's take some question. And thanks for giving us a homework. I hope you don't give a test afterwards.
Well, okay, I'll give you one. Now don't Google this. I'll give you one little question that's a brain teaser. Okay. You got to have a little fun. By the way, a lot of research done on learning. All right. So you got to have fun to learn. So there's only one state capital, only one, where the letters of the capital do not appear in the letters of the state. There's only one state capital where the letters of the capital city do not appear in the letters of the state.
Oxford, Mississippi?
No, Oxford's not the capital of Mississippi. That's Jackson.
Oh, you're right, Jackson.
And so basically, I'll go ahead and tell you who it is. All right. It is South Dakota. You can look it up. Depending on where you're from, it's Pierre or Pierre. And so look it up, and that's all fantastic. Go ahead, Dan. I'm about out of time. So
no, you're fine. So we'll take questions, and then we'll follow up with the announcement of the winners for the door prizes. So let's take the questions first, and again, you have the standing invitation to come and visit us. Look forward to seeing you. And so let's take the questions, comments from the audience.
Hello, William.
My name's Hey, Bill. My name is Paul. First and foremost, thank you very much. This is a terrific conversation you had. One quick question I had was regarding to that big audacious goal that you have. That 10,000 number, is that you expecting to do that all yourself? And if not, what are your strategies to engage with the rest of the community to help you achieve that goal? Because obviously you set it up as it's not just for you, but that it's community wide. So how do you what do you do to impact that?
Well, so let's talk about some of the things we need to do. So when you build a community, people you have to make everyone feel welcome, right? Everybody's got to feel welcome. So how do you do that? All right. So I looked around, sort of did an inventory, and my wife and I, this is probably, 5 years ago, we did an inventory of what we have and don't have. And families, young, people, first they want to buy a house, all right? And so you can afford a house, maybe not right in Oxford, but outside in the county. Number one. And number two, the school systems there, you've got to work to make the school systems first rate. And they are. You see, have a lot of spouses that are have their spouse is a faculty member. And so education is very important. That's very important among teachers and among your populace. And then you have to have community facilities and places of worship for everyone, not just a few. So we have a mosque in Oxford, and we need a temple. We're in the process of putting together a plan to raise money for a Jewish temple, and because I want to be able to hire people, smart people. We want to hire smart people, and smart people need community. They may not know it when they're younger, but as they get older, they need community, and so we're in the process of doing that. And we've got a really good music scene. Look, your dean can tell you we got a great music scene and we got a great restaurant scene. A lot of New Orleans chefs are there. We've got I think now 5 or 6 Beard Award winners. James Beard, which is like the restaurant award. We don't have any Michelin star restaurants, but they're none of those outside of New York for the most part. But we got a great restaurant scene, and so it's a cool town. And we gotta we're very involved in the community. In fact, one of our employees is the president of United Way. You got to keep them involved, and that's very important. When you start doing this, that you got to build community, and that means involvement, it means commitment, it means money, and looking at what you need you have, and you got to be there for everybody. You can't say I'm gonna do it for this person or this need or that need. It's got to be across the board. Does that make sense?
Next question. Any other question?
Thank you for your time. So my question is, I know you mentioned that in terms of innovation, there is not much new under the sun, but let's say that you do truly have an innovative product with a market that does not exist yet. So do you have any insights on how to determine whether or not there will be interest by investors or by potential customers, especially as it pertains to not tipping off future competitors to that proprietary technology?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you start with a new when you don't have a market. So there's something called a diffusion process, and your marketing class will probably cover a diffusion process. You've heard of innovators, early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and laggards. That's a diffusion process. How long does it take for that to occur? So when the internet came out, I mean, when I moved to Ole Miss as a faculty member, basically, that was in 1990. We were still, email was, I know this is hard to believe, but email was still very nascent. All right. You had I think AOL really cranked up about 92 long in there. I think Tim Berners-Lee is credited with inventing essentially the World Wide Web, and Mark Andreessen of the browser. And so they came out with that, and so how long did it take for that to become widely adopted and accepted? So I think it's important to study on something that's truly new and innovative, as opposed to a better way of doing what we do today. It's important to study that diffusion process, and the way you do that is you talk to focus groups and you talk about things. Now, let's talk about competition. I was shocked. We picked out 3 companies at FNC we wanted to be like. We picked out SAS. If you're in the academic world, you know who SAS is. I think it stands for Statistical Application Software. SAS. We picked out Bloomberg. If you're in the financial markets, you know exactly who Bloomberg is. And we picked out Quicken Loans. That's the predecessor in name to Rocket Mortgage. And we went and we asked them all, do you worry about the competition? And Bill Emerson, who was the CEO at the time, looked at me and he said, we don't worry about the competition. We need to set the pace. All right. We don't worry about the competition. So you figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and then take the legal protections. There are trade secrets, or trademarks, there are patents, all those kind of things, and protect what you need to protect. But then you need to lay out your game and execute it, and get a good feel for how long it's going to take you to do it. That'd be my advice. I mean, that's a lot easier said than done. It's easy to say those words, but it's difficult to go out and do it. All right. Other questions?
Well, it looks like those are all the questions that we have. And
one more quick one, if you wouldn't mind.
sure.
Sorry. The one thing that I would hear a bit more about is, how do you find what it is that you want to do? I've worked for companies large and small, and have not found, and actually I just recently left a job working for people that I did not respect and I did not want to make money for. So I'm ready to take that step into wanting to do something and build something. So how do you evaluate? Like you said, also, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be something. You have to start somewhere. So is there any process or any recommendation or anything you could give us for what that might look like?
So you got to find what you enjoy doing. What you enjoy doing, you'll be successful at. I don't know what you enjoy doing because I don't know you, and nobody else does. Only you know what you enjoy. And so whatever that is, you got to write that down. And you may not know that yet. You may have had a lot of experiences, but you may not know what you really enjoy. Whatever that is, you need to do something in that realm. And then what you need to write down what you hate. Now you sound like you've got that down. All right. You already know what you dislike. Okay. So write that down, and write down, by the way, why you did not respect those people you work for. Until you write it down, it doesn't become real. And writing it down it could be a euphemism. You put it on a tablet or on your phone. What is it about them you did not respect? Did they not walk the walk, or what was it that they didn't do? In other words, they told you to do X, but they didn't do X. I don't know what it is. I mean, there's a lot of reasons people don't respect others, but whatever it is, write that down. And when you look to partner with someone or build a team, if you find those skills or find those things in them, you need to X that person off. It's like, I'm not doing anything with you. And so, but it's very important to, and it's a lot easier said than done. All right. It is a lot easier said than done. Also, you got to keep your eye on the prize. And the prize is, what do you want to do? And how do you keep score? That's the prize. It's not everybody thinks that you're going to make a bunch of money. And if you're successful, you do make a bunch of money, but that won't make you happy. All right. Making a bunch of money will not make you happy. You got to do the things that make you happy. I've done deals where I made a bunch of money and deals where I didn't make a bunch of money. And some of the deals I didn't make a bunch of money, I was, my co-founder at FNC, Dennis Tosh, said, money won't buy you happiness, but it sure will buy you a nice home in a happy neighborhood. All right. All right. I think that's probably good for tonight, Dean. Are we good?
Yeah. I mean, I cannot thank you enough. It was really a proud moment for me personally, and our next speaker, the next speaker in the series, he is also a serial entrepreneur. As a matter of fact, his company has innovated a product most of you are familiar with, the Mucinex, cold medicine. So that came out of his lab, so John Adams. So he will be our next speaker, and that's for the spring term. And that event is planned for May 26th. And so just want to make that announcement here. And the door prize winner, and as I mentioned at the beginning, that you have to be present to win the Amazon gift card, $50 gift card. The first name I'm going to call is Chelsea Wright. Is Chelsea here? Okay. The next name we have is Tyler Barossa. Tyler, our Delta Mu Delta New Chi chapter president, is he here?
Hey, Dean Ahmed. Yes, I am here. Thank you for your presentation, Bill. It was a lot of great information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tyler. And I'm going to call the second name, Ephraim Gibson. Is Ephraim here? Natalie Ferrara. Rebecca Dingle.
I'm here.
Okay. So we have two door prize winners, Tyler and Rebecca. And you will hear from the School of Management.
Which Rebecca?
Excuse me?
I think there are two Rebeccas in the chat.
Oh, okay. Rebecca Dingle. D-N-G-L.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, Rebecca and Tyler, both of you will hear from my office tomorrow. So each one of you will be winning, will be getting $50 Amazon gift card. Okay, and I think that's about it for tonight. Thank you everyone for attending and engaging Dr. Rayburn. And Dr. Rayburn, I still remember Dick Evans, Dr. Evans. I think he was your dissertation chair, right?
I'm sorry, did you ask me a question? I had no. I was on mute.
Yeah. I was saying that Dr. Dick Evans of Memphis State wasn't he your dissertation chair?
No, the department chair in finance was my dissertation chair, but he was on it.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I remember him meeting him.
Right.
So anyway, thank you, and enjoy the evening, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I hope to see you in the next event.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.